Afternoon, guys. Hope you're all doing well. I'm back again. Now, I want to bring back to you guys' attention about this individual, Gordon Buchan. I don't know if any of you remember this guy, but on the back end of last year, Gordon Buchan, to start with, was a CEO of the WOLFPACK Hunters, which is a paedophile hunting group down there in Glasgow. Now, bearing in mind, guys, that this Gordon Buchan, on one hand, goes after predators, and tries to bring them to justice, even though there's a lot of controversy surrounding this individual, Gordon Buchan. As you're about to see in the newspaper article. But the reason why I'm doing this is because Gordon needs bringing back to the forefront. He's another scumbag. If none of you remember, towards the back end of last year, he was actually defending DECCA HEGGIES, and he did produce a video claiming that DECCA had no sexual convictions, and he was really defending DECCA HEGGIES. Now, the problem with this is that I found, he's a CEE, was a CEO of a paedophile hunting group, but on the other hand, he was actually defending a sexual predator. I found this newspaper article, which I'd like to bring to all your attention again. This guy needs definite bringing back to the forefront because, he was strongly defending DECCA. But yet, on his other hand, he was a paedophile hunter. So, I don't know how that kind of weighed up. You can't be defending sexual predators, and then going after predators yourself. So I'm just going to read this article explaining how he came about to get a 2-year ban, that he couldn't predator hunt for 2 years. He got banned, and it will just go to show you the highlights of the extent that his group actually went to. And he actually, Gordon, disgraces the good work of the paedophile hunters up there in Scotland. So it says, dad and son from Wolfpack Hunters UK locked up after turning up late for Forfar court case. There you can see it, guys. There's father and son on the screen. Gordon's on the left and his son's on the right. Father and son, members of a self-styled paedophile hunting gang, have been locked up after turning up late for an August court appearance. Gordon and Jay Buchan had been due to appear with 2 co-accused at Forfar Sheriff's Court on Thursday for sentencing over their part in an incident in the Angus town in August 2018. They were part of a contingent involving members of the Wolfpack Hunters UK who travelled to Angus from Lothians and Glasgow, leading to a major police response and the initial arrest of 6 people. Gordon Buchan, 40, and Jay Buchan, 19, both of Glenfinnan Road, Glasgow, along with Karen Ferry, 48, of Lilac Avenue, Dalkeith, and Marksin Cukake, 39, of Easter Dry Law Place, Edinburgh, all previously pleaded guilty to breaching the peace in Fulfar's Old Halkerin Road on August the 15th, 2018. They admitted attending the street as a group, behaving in an offensive manner, presenting banners and with hoods over their heads and faces masked, shouting, swearing and making offensive remarks while broadcasting their behaviour live on social media. All four had been due to appear for sentence before Sheriff Gregor Murray at Fulfar, but only Ferry made it into the dock when the case was called. Solicitor Andrew Lyle for Gordon Buchan said his client had advertised instructing agents that he had been suffering from a suspected chest infection or heart problem and might not be able to attend. He also told the sheriff had been delayed, but a background report on that accused was not available. J. Buchan was not represented in the court, leading to the sheriff issuing arrest warrants in respect of the three males accused. Buchan Senior and Junior are understood to have arrived at court later and were arrested. It is understood they would appear from custody at Fulfar on Friday. The warrant for Kilcack remains outstanding. Sheriff Murray told Ferry, "I recognise you have cooperated throughout, unlike your co-accused, who have done nothing of the sort, but it is appropriate you are sentenced together." He continued her case until March the 5th. In August 2018 incident, the group arrived around 8 p.m. and were eventually escorted from the street around 3 hours later. Police maintained an overnight presence at the property. A video of the Fulfar incident on the group's Facebook site was viewed more than 25,000 times before being taken down. Now, what that incident was in regards to is that Gordon Buchan believed that somebody had made derogatory comments as regards to a member of his family. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this back up to the forefront is the reason that, you know, he's supposed to be a CEO of a paedophile hunting group, and, you know, quite clearly all he's done, you know, he's caused havoc, you know, and they haven't acted as other paedophile hunting groups have acted, you know, and their actions has brought shame upon the good paedophile hunting groups, you know, in and around the UK. But the main reason, you know, why I'm bringing him back to the forefront is because on one hand, he's meant to be a predator hunter, you know, but yet he found the necessary need to actually defend a sexual predator. He produced a video in massive support of DECCA and claiming that he hasn't got any sexual convictions. I'm about to play for you a video that he made as regards to his support that he had for DECCA. Let me just...
you know what I mean?
Just add this to the... Let me take that back to the start. But you'll hear through towards the end of this where he actually defends a sexual predator. You know, and he's nothing but brought shame upon himself, you know, for, you know, the defending that he done. Afternoon, Maria. Hope you're doing well. So
So DECCA Heggie is a guy that I kind of managed for about 12 weeks back in my Burnley days, and what he done is he slapped a bird's arse, right, and he was convicted for it, right, because he propositioned her for.
No, he didn't just slap the bird's arse. You know, he actually followed her into the toilet, you know, and tried to grape her in the nightclub toilet.
Sex in a nightclub as a young guy, you know what I mean? And she went to the police, who was convicted. But a guy that I kind of managed about 12 weeks back in my bare knuckle days, and what he done is he slapped a bird's arse, right, and he was convicted for it, right, for sex in a nightclub as a young guy, you know what I mean? And she went to the police, who was convicted. But there's this group of trolls, right, that are branding him a paedophile. They're saying that they've done Sarah's laws and all that, and Claire's laws, and he's done all sorts of fucking things with 11-year-olds and 14-year-olds, but they won't show any evidence. The evidence they have shown is absolutely fucking ridiculously bad. Not mean like the.
Let me just stop you there, Mr. Gordon Buchan. There's a 55-page acro belonging to DECCA, and you're saying that the evidence is absolutely ridiculous. No wonder your paedophile hunting group didn't go far, except for jail. You're just a disgrace, you know, to the good groups out there, you know, that are actually doing great, you know, in and around the UK, of actually catching predators, and you don't find any of them enligning themselves with a sexual predator. So that remark you've made just there is just ridiculous.
Like for example, the emails between the so-called Dodgy Dave and the police. The police start the email Dave and end it Emma. Now, as you all know, the police will call you Mr. Buchan, and they'll end it with PC Ferguson or DS fucking, you know what I mean? They don't start with your name and end it with their name, you know what I mean? They're not that powerful, right? They also, you're in a conversation with somebody through email, it comes up, they start, like, so basically, it will come up, Coca-Cola, right? And then the response will be RE Coca-Cola, right? Well, these ones were changing for, it started off, right? 2 seconds, this is going to cut it again, so I need to start again. The emails were starting, DECCA Heggie, Sarah's Law, then it was switching to RE DECCA Heggie, know what I mean? Some would say RE DECCA Heggie, no, Derek Gordon Heggie, and some would say just Derek Gordon Heggie, Sarah's Law, right? Supposedly this guy recorded a Sarah's Law, right? Get tell Sarah's Law. Police haven't done him, right? The police haven't arrested him or nothing like that, right? He's posted it online. This man robbed an 88-year-old woman. He wears a balaclava on his face when he's making his YouTube videos because he robbed an 88-year-old woman, right? Who is the nonce? There's absolutely no proof Derek Heggie is a paedophile. If it ever comes to light that Derek Heggie is a paedophile, I will be the first one to light him up. But I'll light him up with petrol and a fucking lighter because he's been ruining my son, right? I've not defended DECCA HEGGIE. What I have done is I have asked for basically proof. I've asked for legal proof that he's on a sex offenders register. I've seen his criminal record and there is absolutely no sex crimes on it apart from...
So there we go, people. He's made a statement there. There's absolutely no sexual offences. There's one sexual offence on there, and there's numerous allegations, NFAs, for grape. You know, so there's no way that a person in your position, you know, should be producing and defending a sexual predator. You know, it just goes to show you, you know, that whatever work that it is you try to do in catching predators, you know, it just makes you look like an idiot. You don't see any other groups out there aligning themselves with the likes of Derek Gordon Heggie. And I know you produced another video which I've been trying to get, but I can't get. When I find it, I will do a part 2 on this too. To the very first video he put up, and the way that he was actually defending DECCA. Afternoon, Welsh girl. Hope you're doing well. I'll just continue.
When he was like 22 and he slapped the bird in the arse and propositioned her for sex. I went as far as contacting the bouncers and somebody that worked in the club that night, right? And DECCA says that his words to her were, "Do you want to fuck?" Right? His words were something like, "You're going to let me bend you the sink." That was his actual words still, right? He didn't force his way into the toilet and then saw caught on camera. Is there toilet cameras in women's toilets these days? That he forced her into the cubicle and all that. Like, none of this came out in the papers, none of this came out in the court transcripts, but this is what's getting said. It's not in. See the guy that actually started it? It's a troll called John Wasson, humble dryer, right? He admitted to me on the phone that he was a big fan of DECCA HEGGIE. He had a few drinks in him one night and decided to troll him, and it's all just spiralled through there. Know what I mean? But it'll get dealt with. It will.
You know, so as you heard there, guys, you know, this Gordon Buchan, he's meant to be a paedophile hunter, but yet he found it upon himself to defend DECCA HEGGIE. And incidentally, he was saying that he's asked bouncers and he put decoys onto DECCA, and that was all a big lie. He hasn't. He has never put decoys onto DECCA. He's never interviewed any bouncers as regards to that incident that night, but yet, you know, he still wants to find it upon himself to support sexual predators, but yet he's chasing after predators himself. I mean, but as you've seen from that newspaper article, you know, then they're nothing but a bunch of clowns, you know, that have got together and they've made a mockery, you know, of proper paedophile hunting groups. Now, I know Humble Dryer, he's covered this subject also, as regards to Gordon Buchan. You know, if you jump across to the Humble's channel, you can see the videos that he's done on this Gordon Buchan. And, you know, I felt it the need to bring this guy to the forefront. You know, as I do, I want to keep these idiots and scumbags to the forefront, you know, of everybody's mind, you know, because the way that he expressed, oh, he slapped a bird on the ass. I mean, that's not the words of a predator hunter. And it wasn't just a slap on the backside, as you know, Gordon. You know, he followed her into the toilet and he tried to rape her. And the evidence that is out there, Gordon, you know, you're in denial of that fact because, you know, you're a heavy supporter of DECCA. You know, and as for making videos to try and clear his name, you could never do that. There's a 55-page acro, you know, that's out there with all the information that people need to see. There's been numerous videos made of interviews as regards to victims, you know, of DECCA. You know, so you're another scumbag that I'm going to keep to the forefront, you know, because you're supposed to have been helping people, you know, that have fallen victims, you know, of predators. You know, no wonder you got put in jail. No wonder you got banned for 2 years, you know, from hunting paedophiles. You know, so I'm gonna be making sure you're put to the forefront, you know, because you can't simply do a job like that and then be a full-time supporter of somebody who's got numerous rape allegations on their record, you know, as well as the incident at the nightclub. I've seen the names, but I haven't seen what he did. Sounds the same as DECCA. What is the matter with these people? I don't know, Welsh girl. I mean, but you know, I'm gonna keep these scumbags, you know, to the forefront. You know, they can't just slither away, you know, into the air and hope people are never going to cover it again. You know, because he was held in a job of responsibility and claiming, you know, that he's out there to hunt predators, but yet he's given a glowing reference to a sexual predator, you know, at the same time. I know Humble's covered this subject also about Gordon Buchan, you know, but I just want to keep these sort of scumbags, you know, to the forefront so people don't forget the enabling that they've done, you know, in the way to support DECCA. The link's there, you know, if anybody wants to jump on. You know, but this guy puts a shame, you know, to the decent paedophile hunting groups in and around the UK, Scotland, and Ireland. Hope you're good, Irish Ball. Link's there, mate, if you want to jump on. You know, I'm just bringing this degenerate Gordon Buchan back to the forefront, you know, because of his enabling, you know, of DECCA. And then trying to give him a clear pass ticket, when in actual fact, you know, he's supposed to be going after predators, but yet he's giving alibis and, you know, trying to say that he's got no sexual convictions on his record, and we all know the truth behind it. So where is this low life now? Well, Skill, I do believe that his group has disbanded. You know, the ladies that was involved in his paedophiling group, they've now dispersed and they've opened up their own group up there in Glasgow. But I do believe that Gordon has now reopened a new paedophile hunting group there in Glasgow. You know, so they need to be brought aware. But no doubt he's only got scumbags in his group like himself. You know, and you know, it's this type of person that brings shame, you know, upon all the decent paedophile hunting groups out there in and up and down the UK, Ireland, and Scotland, you know, that do a terrific job, you know, of catching these predators. And for him to align himself, you know, with DECCA and giving him alibis and saying that a pat on the backside is all that he done. No, he knows the full extent. He knows about the 55-page acro. For you guys just tuning in now, I'm going to replay this video for you guys.
So DECCA HEGGIES is a guy that I kind of managed for about 12 weeks back in my bare knuckle days, and what he done is he slapped a bird's arse, right, and he was convicted for it, right, because he propositioned her for sex in a nightclub as a young guy, you know what I mean, and she went to the police, he was convicted. But there's this group of trolls, right, that are branding him a paedophile. They're saying that they've done Sarah's laws and all that, and Claire's laws, and he's done all sorts of fucking things with 11-year-olds and 14-year-olds and all that, but they won't show any evidence. The evidence that they have shown is absolutely fucking ridiculously bad. Not mean like the, for example, the emails between the so-called Dodgy Dave and the police. The police start the email Dave and end it Emma. Now, as you all know, the police will call you Mr. Buchan, and they will end it with PC Ferguson or DS fucking Priestley, you know what I mean? They don't start with your name and end it with their name, you know what I mean? They're not that powerful, right? The other problem with it is, you know, like when you're in a conversation with somebody via email, it comes up, the start, like, so basically, it will come up, Coca-Cola, right? And then the response will be RE Coca-Cola, right? Well, these ones were changing for, it started off, right? 2 seconds, this is going to cut it again, so I need to start again. The emails were starting, DECCA HEGGIES, Sarah's Law, then it was switching to RE DECCA HEGGIES, know what I mean? Some would say RE DECCA HEGGIES, no, Derek Gordon Heggie, and some would say just Derek Gordon Heggie, Sarah's Law, right? Supposedly this guy recorded a Sarah's Law, right? Tell Sarah's Law. Post hasn't done him, right? The post hasn't done that, right? He's posted it online. This man robbed an 88-year-old woman. He wears a balaclava on his face when he's making his YouTube videos because he robbed an 88-year-old woman, right? Who is the nonce? There's absolutely no proof Derek Heggie is a paedophile. If it ever comes to light that Derek Heggie is a paedophile, I will be the first one to light him up. But I'll light him up with petrol and a fucking lighter because he's been ruining my son, right? I've not defended DECCA HEGGIES. What I have done is I have asked for basically proof. I've asked for legal proof that he's on a sex offenders register. I've seen his criminal record and there is absolutely no sex crimes on it apart from when he was like 22 and he slapped the bird in the arse and propositioned her for sex. I went as far as contacting the bouncers and somebody that worked in the club that night, right? And DECCA says that his words to her were, "Do you want to fuck?" right? His words were something like, "You're going to let me bend you the sink." That was his actual words still, right? He didn't force his way into the toilet and saw caught on camera. Is there toilet cameras in women's toilets these days? That he forced her into the cubicle and all that. Like, none of this came out in the papers, none of this came out in the court transcripts, but this is what's getting said nowadays, you know what I mean? See, the guy that actually started it, it's a troll called John Wasson, humble dryer, right? He admitted to me on the phone that he was a big fan of DECCA HEGGIE. He had a few drinks in him one night and decided to troll him, and it's all just spiralled through there. Know what I mean? But it will get dealt with. It will.
Total enabler, you know, and to think it wasn't just a pat on the arse. You know, there's NFAs for Grape. There's numerous survivors that have come forward, you know, to give their story. Like, I'd advise you all to see the Dot story. You know, afternoon, Steve Rafe. Hope you're doing well, mate. Steve, I was live before. I've just got to edit my live video before, and it'll be going back up later on. I think the internet went a bit funny, and you know there was a blank within it, so I'm gonna take that blank part out and put it back up, mate. Yeah, my internet went down, so what I'm gonna do is edit that blank part out, and as soon as I've edited the blank part where my internet went off, I'm putting that straight back up, mate. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, I'm just bringing this back to the forefront, you know, to somebody who's, you know, meant to be a predator hunter, but in fact they, as you heard from that video there, you know, he's defending DECCA to the hilt above all the information that's out there, you know, as regards to the incident at the nightclub, you know, and the 55-page Jack Crow and everything else. No, it weren't. It's not Virgin. Something, I don't know if it might have been an update. You know, that my computer needed to do. You know, but for some reason it just all went off, and I did jump back on. You know, so I thought I'll edit that blank part out where the internet went down, and that'll be back up in the next couple of hours. But I just needed to get this information back out there, because no one seems to have spoke, you know, about Gordon Buchan for a while now, and I know that he at one point was a fond supporter of DECCA, considering he was in a position of trust and responsibility to, you know, bring these predators to justice. But, you know, really and truthfully, you know, his group ended up in court, and from what I believe, he actually walked away. The whole group eventually did get a 2-year ban from predating hunting because of their actions as regards to one of the team members deciding to get the team to cause an assault. And this is no way to act, you know, as a predator hunter, let alone as a predator hunter group. You know, and I find it quite weird how he aligned himself to DECCA and produced a video stating his full support for DECCA. So on one hand, you know, he wants to protect these children and go after these predators, but yet on the other hand, you know, he was actually doing as much in his power, you know, to defend somebody that was indefendable. I know Humbles covered this last year, but you know, this awareness you know, of these sort of characters, especially when you're held in a position, you know, where you're trying to do right, but you know, you suddenly flip over onto the other side. I find, you know, it's quite ironic. It's very frightening the amount of men who either does this job or has kids and they defend this animal. The disrespect in that sentence, he slapped a bird's ass. I mean, exactly. You know, we all know it went a bit more further than that, and you know, it wasn't just a case of propositioning somebody. You know, she felt it upon herself to call the police immediately because she felt under threat and thought that she was going to get raped. You know, so he's trying to downplay it, and in my book, it just simply doesn't wash. Some genuine, sincere people have been massively affected by this mess, yet they walk the streets lost for words. Cocoa Pops. Big up Rob, big up Steve Rafe, true gentleman. Where are the victims? Scared to come forward as handpicked due to being vulnerable. We live in the shadows. Thank you for exposing these scum, Steve. I'll continue, you know, to do what I feel is the right thing. You know, I'll bring the facts. I'll bring, you know, the truth, you know, surrounding these matters, because I do find it needs to be made more aware that there are characters walking around, and on one hand they're trying to play Mr. Nice Guy, you know, in helping to bring predators uh, to court to be held responsible for their actions, you know, of the dirty behaviours that they do towards children. But yet, on the other hand, you can't be that character and then jump and then defend somebody. Um, you know, where there's way too much evidence out there. You know, and victims, survivors, I should say, that have come forward to tell their story of what DECCA's put them through. You know, simply can't. And a character like this, Gordon Buchan, is just an example, you know, of the type of people out there and the lengths that they would go, you know, to simply try and clear somebody's name that can't be cleared. And quite frankly, I found it downheartening that somebody who runs a paedophile group is actually defending a sexual predator. That needs to be brought to the forefront, because there's still a lot of people out there that might not have heard about this guy. You know, so therefore, you know, this needs to be brought awareness to. Sick people wanting to bully and fulfill their sick needs. I can't work. I have a carer. Well done, sick wankers. This country, you steal money, they give you harder sentences. Abuse kids and women, and it's a smack on the wrist. Seriously, something needs to happen. I've always said that the sentencing guidelines need to change in this country. Parliament needs to pass it through. You know, that if anybody's interfered with a kid, be it online, speaking sexually to children, or actually abusing them physically, they should get a life sentence. And the reason I've come to this conclusion is because you don't just live with this as a child. You know, if you've gone through the abuse, it stays with you for the rest of your life. So you're forever living with the nightmare, you know, of what these predators put the children through, and it carries on into the adulthood life. You know, so therefore, I'm a believer, you know, that if they're put in front of the judge should have the power to pass a life sentence because they've destroyed a child's life going into their adulthood life, and they carry it for the rest of their life, they should get life inside. You know, it needs to be passed through Parliament. Sentencing guidelines in this country need to change. Not of our magnified police force in England, Scotland do fuck all. Thank you to hunter groups. Yes, you know, thank you to the decent hunting predator groups out there, you know, that go after to create justice, you know, for the survivors of the people and children that go through the hands of predators. You know, as for this Gordon Buchan and the Wolfpack hunters, I mean, that's exactly how you should not act, and that's exactly how you should not go about. See, well, Scout, that's what I get. You know, there's a lot of people that fall victim, you know, and become survivors, you know, at the hands of predators. You know, that can't speak out about it for one reason or another, and you know, they live in silence and suffer in silence for the rest of their life. You know, it's them that I reach out to. You know, there are groups, there are organisations, you know, up and down the country, you know, that are there, you know, to help support you and your family, going through the traumatic times, either from childhood going into the adulthood. They're there to help and support you, you know, and to guide you, you know, to try and make your life, you know, that little bit easier, you know, to cope. But nothing's going to be easy to cope with. Justice is one thing, you know, which the courts is not dishing out much of at the moment, you know, towards these predators. They are getting slaps on the wrist, and this is where Parliament need to change their mind. You know, they need to start dishing out life sentences because they're destroying a child's life going into adulthood. It's going to affect them for the rest of their life, and they should receive a life sentence, you know, to stay in line with the crime, that they've destroyed somebody's life totally. It has gone too far, you know, and there's only so much these judges can do within their sentencing guidelines, and you know, it's a shame that not a lot of them are using the top end, you know, of the sentencing scales, you know, for these dirty predators. You know, instead they decide to give a slap on the wrist, and you know, I've even heard people saying, you know, it's therapy that they need. No, it's not therapy because you know it's born in them, so therefore there is no cure whatsoever. But to protect the public, they're best behind bars. That way, you know, they can't do it again, you know, to our children. I volunteered to work for Speak Out Scotland this year as opening pop-up offices. I'm waiting for green light. I want to give back to them. I mean, that's a great idea, you know. You know, me, I haven't got the mind, you know, to be in front of predators and when they're getting stung and stuff like that. You know, I'm not mentally strong enough, you know, and I'd probably do something that would jeopardize, you know, like the cases out there. But definitely Gordon Buchan, and the way that he conducts himself as a predator hunter is this is how not to do it, people. This is definitely how not to do it. You know, this guy's brought shame, you know, upon them good groups out there, especially up there in Glasgow. I mean, you know, AC coming back to life. He's done a terrific job, you know, with bringing predators to justice. You know, sir, I'll take my hat off to you, Alex. That's the correct way to do it. You know, this Gordon Buchan, he's just a joker. I mean, he's proved that in videos he's made in defending DECCA. You know, it's just ridiculous, guys. But, you know, these sort of people need bringing to the forefront, because these are the ones that are making it harder for the true predator hunter groups, you know, to get better convictions, you know, against predators. You know, this guy's just a sham. You know, and guys, I'm just going to make a coffee. I'll be right back, but I'm going to replay this video for those that are just joining now.
So Decca Heggie is a guy that I kind of managed for about 12 weeks back in my bare knuckle days, and what he done is he slapped a bird's arse, right, and he was convicted for it, right, because he propositioned her for sex in a nightclub as a young guy, you know what I mean, and she went to the police, he was convicted. But there's this group of trolls, right, that are branding him a paedophile. They're saying that they've done Sarah's laws and all that, and Claire's laws, and he's done all sorts of fucking things with 11-year-olds and 14-year-olds and that, but they won't show any evidence. The evidence that they have shown is absolutely fucking ridiculously bad. Not mean like the, for example, the emails between the so-called Dodgy Dave and the police. The police start the email Dave and end it Emma. Now, as you all know, the police will call you Mr. Buchan, and they will end it with PC Ferguson or DS fucking Priestley, you know what I mean? They don't start with your name and end it with their name, you know what I mean? They're not that powerful, right? The other problem with it is, you know, like when you're in a conversation with somebody via email, it comes up, the start, like, so basically, it'll come up, Coca-Cola, right? And then the response will be RE Coca-Cola, right? Well, these ones were changing for, it started off, right? 2 seconds, this is going to cut it again, so I need to start again. The emails were starting, Decca Heggie, Sarah's Law, then it was switching to RE Decca Heggie, know what I mean? Some would say RE Decca Heggie, no, Derek Gordon Heggie, and some would say just Derek Gordon Heggie, Sarah's Law, right? Supposedly this guy recorded a Sarah's Law, right? Tell Sarah's Law. Police haven't done him, right? The police haven't arrested him or nothing like that, right? He's posted it online. This man robbed an 88-year-old woman. He wears a balaclava on his face when he's making his YouTube videos because he robbed an 88-year-old woman, right? Who is the nonce? There's absolutely no proof Derek Heggie is a paedophile. If it ever comes to light that Derek Heggie is a paedophile, I will be the first one to light him up. But I'll light him up with petrol and a fucking lighter because he's been ruining my son, right? I've not defended Decca Heggie. What I have done is I have asked for basically proof. I've asked for legal proof that he's on a sex offenders register. I've seen his criminal record and there is absolutely no sex crimes on it apart from when he was like 22 and he slapped the bird in the arse and propositioned her for sex. I went as far as contacting the bouncers and somebody that worked in the club that night, right? And Decca says that his words to her were, "Do you want to fuck?" right? His words were something like, you're going to let me bend you the sink. That was his actual words still, right? He didn't force his way into the toilet and it's all caught on camera. Is there toilet cameras in women's toilets these days? That he forced her into the cubicle and all that. Like, none of this came out in the papers, none of this came out in the court transcripts, but this is
Sorry
what's
about
getting
that,
said.
guys.
Nowadays,
Just
not
like to
me.
go and get a coffee break.
See the guy that actually started it? It's a troll called John Wasson, humble dryer, right? He admitted to me on the phone that he was a big fan of DECCA HEGGIES. He had a few drinks in him one night and decided to troll him, and it's all just spiralled through there. Know what I mean? But it will get dealt with. It will.
Afternoon, PP. How you doing, buddy? Links there if you want to jump on, mate. Have a general chit chat. I mean, but you know, I'm just bringing this Gordon Buchan back to the forefront. You know, because as a CEO of a predator hunter group, and you know, he produced a video defending DECCA. I just felt, you know, that's a conflict of interest, and you know, he puts these other predator groups, you know, in a dark light. But we all know that there's some decent predator groups out there. This guy's just made a total mockery of it, and you know, he did receive a 2-year ban from predator hunting due to an incident that him and his team was involved with. That turned out that the attack was just for, you know, no apparent reason. Yeah, no worries, people. You know, you're more than welcome. More than welcome anytime. You know, but you know, it's these sort of people, Gordon Buchan's, you know, in and around that just play, you know, to being predator hunters. You know, when quite clearly you can't be trying to do the good on one hand, you know, and then defending a sexual predator on the other. You know, and the system, he should have been banned for life from predator hunting, you know, to be fair. Especially his credibility's totally gone. You know, his credibility's gone straight down the drain. And I was just touching on sentencing guidelines, you know, in this country. They need to change, you know, because survivors, you know, of these predators, you know, they go through it from a child right the way up through adulthood, and that's including survivors of rape, adults. You know, they live with this for the rest of their lives, and I feel that the early prison sentence, that's good enough, you know, for people that want to traumatize females and males' lives, is the life inside, because they literally, through their actions, you know, of abusing children, women, men, and going through grapes and stuff, they live with it for the rest of their life. You know, so the only sentence I feel, you know, that's in line with that, you know, is life in prison. And, you know, Parliament needs to start passing the bill, those sentencing guidelines. You know, they need to change. They need to keep up with the times, because this is why they're getting away with it time and time and time again. And this is why they keep doing the crimes, because they know they're going to get a slap on the wrist. It's about time, you know, that these people are made examples of. You know, they can't just keep letting children and women go through this traumatization for the rest of their their life, knowing that the predator, you know, that created that in their world, you know, can walk scot-free. So what's happening with these subhumans? If you, Steve, and others are not making awareness, who would? Scary thought. Yeah, I know. I mean, more people need to, you know, produce the content on bringing the awareness about this. It can't just, you know, be left to float into thin air, you know, because these guys are still walking around the streets, and, you know, and if the judges aren't going to give them the correct sentences, then, you know, there needs to be more people, you know, like myself, that don't mind to bring this sort of awareness back to the forefront. You know, so at least more people in the world can see, you know, exactly what's been going on and who's who and who's done what, and, you know, there needs to be more awareness brought. Normally I pop on, but badly triggered and angry just now, bro. Sorry, Rob. I mean, if this is, you know, affecting you in any way, you know, I don't want to trigger anyone, you know, by doing these sort of awareness videos. So for that, I do apologise. Well, people need to be made aware of these subhumans. Top word name, subhuman. Definitely PP, I agree with you. This is another thing I don't get. The government will have to pay thousands to help these victims, instead of putting money in campaigns, etc., to stop these lowlifes. Exactly, Welsh girl. You know, this is my thinking too. You know, it'll save a heck of a lot of people going through traumatic times and going through it for the rest of their life. There is no cure, you know, for people that act as predators. You know, there is no cure. You know, so for the safest point is to put them behind bars. You know, at least that way the survivors can have the knowledge, knowing, you know, that they're not out on the street, you know, to make their lives hell, and to create, you know, more victims. This is where government, you know, needs to do their part. Yeah, and the more, I mean, instead of doing like all this bickering and arguing and, you know, beefs on YouTube, I mean, their channels could be put to this sort of use, you know, to bring the awareness. I mean, it's a big subject, really, you know, and there is a following. I mean, it's not everybody's cup of tea, you know, to listen to videos like this. You know, I understand, you know, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but, you know, when you're bringing facts to the table, you know, these awareness videos, you know, need to be staying in the forefront. And for the likes of this Gordon Buchan, he just can't be seen to just let off and, you know, wander into the sunset, thinking he's done nothing wrong. You know, where he made loads of statements saying that he put decoy accounts on DECCA and he interviewed bouncers and he interviewed it. That was all lies. You know, there is somebody out there, you know, that's willing to back me on this. I just need to speak to Humble, you know, to get in contact with that person to prove, you know, that this guy's full of lies and full of deceit, and he never once done any sort of investigating on DECCA. He took this all at face value, but he's not sat there putting his hands up to say, "Hey, I've made a mistake here." You know, he's still in support of DECCA. And I can't sum it up or explain that on one hand he wants to protect people, but then on the other hand he's doing exactly the opposite. Oh, there is a cure, isn't there? I mean, even castrating them. You know, if you look at the rules and, you know, what's happening over in America and that, I mean, they're getting castrated over in America. You know, but as for a cure for their mind, you know, there is no cure in my book for them. You know, it's born in them. It's not something like one day you're going to wake up and start taxing drug dealers, and, you know, the next day you can change because it's not with, you know, it's controllable. Whereas, you know, these predators, you know, there is no control. You know, otherwise there wouldn't be no predators, you know. So, you know, I'm a fond believer that, you know, life means life in jail. You know, and these bills of sentences and guidelines, it goes to show you how corrupt, you know, this place really is at times. If something doesn't happen soon, it'll go bang. People are sick and tired. Exactly. You know, they don't want vigilante groups on their hands. You know, that will go around and take matters into their own hands. You know, which is exactly what's going to happen. And then you've got these fake ass Gordon Buchans running around trying to say that they want to protect. You know, but yet they're doing the complete opposite. You know, and in support of you know, predators. I mean, how's it all going to stop? How's it all going to end? It's all going to end in misery and life sentences for people, you know, that decide to take matters into their own hands because they're sick and tired that government and the police, you know, wants to keep brushing it under the carpet, you know, giving them light sentences, you know, because that's exactly what's going to happen. You know, you're going to get vigilante groups going out there and, you know, hurting people, and, you know, maybe they deserve it, you know, on one hand, but then, you know, I look at it from the point of view if they're locked up away inside jail, you know, they can't get to any children or females, you know, to commit these dirty, hideous crimes, you know, but it certainly doesn't help, you know, for the likes of Gordon Buchan's in and around the UK, you know, that think it's great to protect predators and defend predators and enable them, you know, to go on further, um, you know, to abuse more women and children. You know, so the government needs to take responsibility. You know, as like do some of these platforms. You know, like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, blah 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 blah. They need to take responsibility because children and young adults are viewing content that isn't supposed to be for their viewing. You know, and this leads to another part of subject, which is children viewing material. There have been numerous cases where children have viewed material that isn't meant for their eyes, and they've gone out and committed suicide. You know, because these sites aren't taking responsibility, you know, to stop children from viewing the material that isn't meant to be viewed, you know, by them. You know, there's been a couple of females, you know, that have committed suicide because they've been watching certain material and content online, um, you know, that's led for them, you know, to commit suicide because that's what this content has been telling them to do. You know, so in all aspects across the board, you know, they need to take responsibility as much as the law needs to take responsibility, you know, to stop these Gordon Buchans from, on one hand being predator hunters, you know, but yeah, they're defending and enabling a sexual beast predator. Afternoon TroubleNet, big up, mate. How you doing? Links there if you want to jump on for 5 minutes. So, Steve, but they don't do something soon, people will take it in their own hands, and sorry, who can blame them? I mean, exactly, Welsh Girl. I mean, this is what it's going to lead to. You know, and you know, on one hand, maybe that might help, you know, a survivor, but then on the other hand, it's not, because you know, that person who takes it into their own hands are going to end up in jail. You know, and they're not supposed to be in jail, and the predator will still be on the street. You know, but this is exactly the avenue that he's going to be going down. You know, because of the likes of these Gordon Buchans. You know, and I'm forever going to be bringing this awareness, you know, to the forefront, to highlight, you know, these scumbags like Gordon Buchan, because he's not the only one. You know, there's loads of them out there, and you know, I'll be forever sitting here, you know, and bringing this awareness, you know, to you guys, because it needs to be said. Somebody needs to say it. Someone needs to do it, because the past 9 months since Humble Dryer done a video on this guy, you know, it's just gone quiet on his front, and his face needs to be put out there, and facts need to be put there as regards to what he has done, and probably what he still is doing. You know, because you can't support a sexual predator, and then on the other hand go and say that you're a predator hunter. TroubleNet, jump on, links there, buddy. Come and give me your thoughts and opinions, you know, as regards to what you think about predator groups that actually protect and enable predators. You know, I'd love to get you know, another person's point of view, you know, to see what they think, and also, you know, TroubleNet, your point of view on, you know, sentencing guidelines as regards to these predators, you know, and how lightly the law's been going on them, you know, just lately. Controversial subject. I mean, that's you know, my channel seems to have, you know, but my channel's slightly going to be taking a different step from March. From March, I'll be producing a heck of a lot of content as regards to paranormal investigations. You know, I'm hoping, you know, to get 1 or 2 interviews and guests on between now and March. You know, I've got 2 in mind, and they did promise me in the new year, you know, that they'd give me the chance to interview them. So I'm going to hopefully try and get that in place between now and March. And then from March on, I'll be bringing something different to the table. There's already 2 videos up that have gone on paranormal investigations, and, you know, thought that I'd create the video, you know, just for a start, to see what people think about that, and bring in, you know, different content to my channel. So you got that to look forward to, guys, you know, over the next 12 months. As regards to my channel, I will still be doing live videos as regards to the grooming gangs and subjects like Gordon Buchan, and besides 1 or 2, you know, other people. So my channel is going to be staying positive, and, you know, I just needed to step in to help Brian and Emma overcome a couple of bad trolls that they've had for the past 3 years in their life in the way of Jamie Boyle, and I needed to get you know, the awareness put out about what he's been doing towards Brian and Emma. It's not something that I enjoy doing, but you know, it's something that I felt that needed to be done because they're a great couple, Brian and Emma. But like I say, guys, this Gordon Buchan's and people's like this of the world, they, you know, they need to be shown for what they really are. But I'm quite looking forward to doing a few more paranormal investigations. That's something I'm looking forward to for my channel over the starting from March. But I don't understand how you. I mean, if you look at all these other predator groups, you don't find any of them aligning themselves with somebody who's got controversy surrounding their life as regards to, you know, being a sexual predator themselves. And with NFAs, a great on their record. I couldn't simply find myself aligning myself with somebody that's got NFAs as regards to grapes and stuff like that. But like they say, birds of a feather flock together. There seems to be a lot of people flocking together just lately. No, carry on, WOLFPACK. I mean, you know, this is maybe a time, you know, for people to, you know, get things off their chest, especially, you know, if they are a survivor, you know, of this hideous behaviour of some people. But what makes me more than angry is the likes of these Gordon Buchans, you know, who think it's okay. You're either in it or you're not in it. You can't have half foot in and a half foot out. You know, you either go the full whack to out these predators, or you just simply don't. Don't put half your foot in the door and half your foot out. Meaning you can't go after them on one hand and then protect one on the other hand. That will be good, Steve. A few places in Wales supposedly got paranormal activity. I mean, we are going to be obviously starting off in the Shropshire area, you know, but we are going to be travelling to locations in and around the UK, you know, to cover paranormal activities. You know, I'm quite looking forward to that. It's something that I can honestly say I wasn't a believer, you know, in stuff like this. I'm one of these people that would have to see it with my own eyes, and that's exactly, you know, what I done. I ventured out of my comfort zone, you know, to see what this is all about, and you know, now I've seen it with my own eyes. You know, I think it's something, you know, I might be interested in. My wife, she's forever watching videos of paranormal activities and groups that go out there and do the investigating, and you know, she also wants to be a part of this team in Telford, you know, to do the investigations. I mean, so you know, I'm 60% convinced with the experience over the next 6 months. You know, hopefully that'll take my believing from 60% to 100%. But you know, this is something new to me, and you know, I think it will produce good content for my channel. You know, so bit of an all-rounder. I think my channel is going to be. I know a lot of people are going to hope that I'm not going in that direction I did towards the back end of last year. You know, I've taken some very good advice from Stephen Rafe and Humble and one or two other people, and they're telling me don't get involved or mixed up in drama, which it might look like, you know, I'm getting mixed up in drama, but I'm not. You know, I simply wanted to do something to help a great couple, you know, in a time of need. And, you know, I've promised myself I'm not going to get involved in dramas, or input myself in a place where, you know, I could be dragged into drama. You know, so Mr. Rafe, you know, thank you ever so much, you know, for that great advice, and I have taken it on board. And I don't want my channel going down the route of where I could be seen in drama or getting dragged into drama. That's not going to happen. There's plenty of content out there for me to create, to carry me forward for the next 6 months, because I think my channel's grown the past 6 months. You know, I've gained more subscribers, and I'm coming up close to 1 million views. You know, and that's not too bad, considering I haven't touched on any dramas, you know, to get views and clicks and likes, because that's not what my channel is all about. I can care less if I only got like 200 views per video, you know, because it's something I'll work on, and I've got myself a 3 to 5 year plan, you know, in place to build my channel. So right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there, and guys, you have a lovely afternoon, and I'll catch up with you later on. I've got another live coming up later on this evening with Brian Cockrell, so tune in for that one, guys. Be roughly about 7 o'clock. I'll be going live tonight with Brian Cockrell. So until then, guys, you have a pleasant afternoon, and I'll speak to you later.